Morris. I'm a farmer, I've been a contractor, done quite a substantial amount of work in the forestry. I've also been a preacher for 50 years. I'd like to draw your attention tonight to the hedgerow management which is in this green book belonging to sustainable farming. Headline, hedgerow management. Let me read some of the points that have been brought to light. We are to develop hedgerows to become thick, dense, stock-proof barriers which also provide valuable shelter and an important habitat for wildlife. The question needs to be asked, isn't that what they like today? After all the management over the years? I cannot understand what they mean when they say sustainable hedge management. Let me go further than that. Let me read some of the things. It says, we will support you to manage your hedgerows sustainably. This includes trimming sympathetically in such a way to a slightly higher and wider point each trim, which keeps the hedge healthy. Reading on further, it tells us that we are only to trim the hedge once every 2 years. Now, if you stop and think about this, and I would appeal to you who love bird watching and the general public, the best place for a bird to nest, and I'm talking about little birds, is in the top of a trimmed hedge. We did a survey this afternoon, my granddaughter and myself, and in a hedge that had been trimmed for the last 12 years, we found the remains of 19 birds' nests. We then went to a hedge that had 2 years' growth. We looked at it and we didn't find a nest. We then moved to a hedge which hasn't been bleached in 30 years, which would be over 3 meters high. And we found one bird's nest at the top of a tree. Now, surely this is telling us something. Now, you might ask me, what's wrong with trimming a hedge every 2 years? First of all, this statement tells us that we are to leave about a 2-inch growth or something similar higher every time we trim it. Now, to do that, you're encouraging the dense growth to separate. You're not going to have the density for the bird to nest in. Secondly, if you trim it every second year, it's going to take you 3 passes to get the hedge tidy. That means more diesel and more time rather than trimming every year. Now, that's not my financial situation to discuss this, but it does not make sense. If you want to do things economically and you want to do them environmentally, then this is totally absurd. Now, secondly, having found the nests and looked into the situation, I want to explain a little bit more. A new hedge, it tells us, to be stock-proof in its own right, without fence lines, with the development of dense bushy growth starting or near the base to block livestock. Now, it's near nigh impossible to stop livestock eating away at the hedge. I could tell them over and over again, don't eat the hedge, but I'm afraid they don't listen. This seems incredibly childish to think that you can have a hedge without the stock eating it. It goes on to say that we have to have trees spaced along the length of the hedgerows, and that means planting a tree every 50 meters. If you go out and have a look at the hedges around you, and you'll see those that are trimmed, and then perhaps you'll come across an oak tree, and you'll find that underneath the oak tree there is no vegetation. Why is that? Because the tree has taken all the water. They're asking us to have a gap-free hedge, and yet they're telling us to plant trees. Doesn't anybody understand what country life is like? And then I want to go a little bit further. Where has the curlew disappeared to? Where has the wasp disappeared to? Where has the hedgehog gone? These things concern us in the country because we see that because badgers are not culled, it is a source for their diet. What are they going to do? If you have, many times years ago, you would be trimming a hedge and a wasp, and you're obviously trimming it by hand when I started out, a wasp would sting you on the back of the neck or on the hand. Now you can't even find a wasp's nest in the ground. Why? Because a few years ago the badgers are so thick on the ground, they come along, they pull out the cone and they eat the larvae. Is perhaps a good source for their diet, but it kills off the wasps. What about the hedgehog? The hedgehog is a robust and a lovely animal, but what's happened to them? The badger has come and eaten their diet, so there's nothing left. Where is the sense of allowing one species to overrun every other species? Shouldn't we not bring things under control as they had done for years and years and years? Now, I've spoken about the wasp and I've spoken about the hedgehog, but I want to speak to you about the lapwing. Where are our lapwings gone? Now, we are farmed in the same way, and my father before me, and we've always grown corn right down the years. Now, this was a good habitat for curlews to nest in. You always would hear them calling, and it was beautiful to hear them singing as they came and spent their time in the spring. And they would land on the cornfield and lay their eggs in the soil. They never made a nest, and it would be very difficult to find a nest because it was so well camouflaged. But we don't have a curlew. Now, in 1973, the government introduced a bill that we were not to touch a badger. Now, I have nothing against badgers, but the sheer quantity are now becoming a serious threat. The last known lapwing that I know in this area was in 1998, and it was on a farm that I went to, and the old farmer, he's dead now, he told me when I went to work in the field, don't go near that part of the field. I put a stick there because there's a lapwing, and that's the last one I knew. What happened to the eggs? Badgers have come along and they've eaten up the eggs. Ground nesting birds are very, very short on the ground because of this one species taking over every other species. This is crazy. This scheme is supposed to be looking after wildlife, and yet it's so far from the truth. People are so far removed from what happens in the country that they have no idea what they're talking about. Now, let me go further and say this. Trimming hedges every 2 years is very, very foolish. There is no nesting ability. There's nothing, there's no cover. What's going to happen to the birds? Where are they going to nest if we take away their habitat? We've already taken away the habitat of the hedgehog. We've taken away the habitat of the lapwing. What else are we going to take away in this scheme that seems so absurd? I wish that some of the bird lovers of our country would come out and talk to us. Every farmer knows that what I'm saying is absolutely correct. Why don't they come and talk to us that we could show them exactly what happens and the balance that's necessary to control and to keep wildlife healthy in the country. Now, I want to finish with these words. And I would remind you that I'm not trying to get at anyone. I'm just saying that people don't seem to understand what takes place. We'll finish with these words. Where is the wisdom of the wise? Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and good understanding have all they that do his commandment. Perhaps we've moved away from the real problem. Thank you for listening. Maybe I'll make one more.